There are some games that entertain you, some that impress you, and then very rarely, there are games that sit with you quietly long after the screen goes dark. Games that don't demand attention, but earn it. Games that don't shout their meaning, but wait patiently for you to notice it yourself. Clair Obscur Expedition 33 is one of those games. Though it did arrive with bombastic trailers, it didn't have years of anticipation. Sandfall Interactive announced it almost casually, and then against expectation, it became Game of the Year in 2025. A dark horse, if you will. A game whose power came not from spectacle, but from restraint. And that restraint, I think, unsettled some people, because Clair Obscur isn't interested in empowerment or moral certainty. It doesn't reassure you that your choices are correct. Instead, it asks a far more uncomfortable question. When faced with loss, what would you choose to preserve? I didn't expect this game to affect me the way that it did, but it's the first game in years that made me feel something genuinely complex. Not joy or sadness, but an uneasy mixture of grief, empathy, discomfort, and, ultimately, self-awareness. And by the time I reached the ending, I realized something that stayed with me far longer than any boss fight or story twist ever could. The game wasn't just asking me to choose an ending. It was quietly asking me how emotionally prepared I really was. This is Clair Obscur.
Tomorrow comes.
I finished Clair Obscur a little while ago, and I chose Mael's ending. At the time, it felt obvious, natural, humane even. The world may have been painted, but the people inside it felt undeniably real. They spoke with intention. They feared death. They loved one another. They dreamed of futures that extended beyond the brushstrokes. To erase the canvas felt like murder, to be honest. Verso's ending, by contrast, felt cold, final, kind of like giving up, like choosing oblivion over life. And after fighting so hard against Renoir in the final boss, after resisting inevitability for the entire game, I assumed that victory itself justified my decision, that if we could save the canvas, then we should. Survival must be good then, right? Preservation must be moral. Looking back, I realized I wasn't choosing empathy, I was choosing comfort. Why preservation felt like maturity. So much of the discourse around Clair Obscur revolves around one question. Are the people in the canvas real? But that question is a distraction, I think. Because the canvas is not collapsing due to some philosophical ambiguity about sentience. It's collapsing because Mael and Aline simply can't let go. Their desire to remain inside the painted world forever. To hold on to a version of reality that existed before their loss. Creates the very instability that threatens everything. When you see the story from this angle, Renoir changes completely. He stops being the villain. He becomes a grieving parent trapped in an endless cycle of resistance and surrender. Someone who understands that the canvas cannot last, but who also understands how unbearable it is to force his daughter to face that truth. And when he finally gives in, it isn't because Mael is right, it's because continuing to fight her is painful. More than losing the world. Saving the canvas doesn't solve the problem, preserves it. And preservation, when it refuses to acknowledge reality, is not maturity, it's avoidance. The party as emotional stages. I've never bought into the whole 5 stages of grief thing. It feels more like pop psychology to me, though the different characters do feel like different ambiguous stages of grief when looked at from a subjective point of view. This becomes clearer when you look at the party itself. Luna, Ciel, Monaco, and Esquier aren't just companions. They're emotional positions. Different ways people respond to grief when they don't know how to process it. Luna and Ciel are defiant, angry. Their resistance feels righteous, even heroic, but it's rooted in fear. As long as the canvas exists, the loss isn't final. As long as they keep fighting, they don't have to accept what's already gone. Monaco and SKA, on the other hand, are quieter. They don't demand permanence. They don't necessarily equate endurance with virtue. They understand that grief isn't conquered, it's accepted. That's why Luna's line resonates so strongly. As long as even one of us stands, our fight is not over. And that's why her choice to sit in Versa's ending matters so much. It isn't defeat, it's acceptance. Maëlle, why I understood her. This is where the mirror becomes impossible to ignore. Maëlle's hypocrisy is obvious in hindsight, but it didn't repel me at first, because I understood it. She erases painted Alicia without hesitation, because she wanted to die. Verso isn't given the time to say goodbye to his real sister. The decision is swift, clinical, and unquestioned. But when Verso himself expresses the same desire, when he wants to be released, to let the canvas end, Maëlle refuses outright. Not just because she loves him too deeply, because she needs him to stay. Erasing Alicia removes emotional competition. Keeping Verso preserves emotional comfort. Maëlle speaks about responsibility while denying others agency entirely, and I sided with her, because her logic aligned perfectly with my own emotional immaturity. If something reduces my pain, it must be right? The uneasy return of Gustave. Gustave's return should feel like catharsis. It should feel like justice, like restoration, but it doesn't. It feels staged, artificial, and slightly wrong. Once you understand the nature of the canvas, his presence in the ending stops feeling like a miracle and starts feeling like a compromise. Something brought back not because it should exist, but because Maëlle could not bear its absence. This is not healing, denial with a comforting face, and I accepted it willingly because it spared me from confronting loss, what the game showed me about myself. I've never experienced profound loss in my life, not truly, and Clair Obscur exposed that. When faced with grief, I didn't fully understand. I didn't choose acceptance. I chose preservation. I chose to freeze the world at the moment before it hurt. I mistook avoidance for compassion. I mistook comfort for maturity. The game didn't punish me for that choice. It simply let me see it clearly. The ending that hurt. Maëlle's ending is the ending I wanted. Verso's ending is the ending that hurt. But pain isn't immaturity. Avoiding it is. Verso's ending allows things to end. And endings, no matter how devastating, are necessary. Without them, nothing moves forward. Nothing heals, nothing changes. Final thought. Clair Obscur isn't about whether the canvas is real per se. It's about whether refusing to let go is. And maybe that's why this game lingers so deeply. Why it unsettles people. Why it divides them. Because one day every one of us will face a loss we can't paint over. And when that moment comes, we won't be asked what ending we want. We'll be forced to choose whether we're ready to let go.